Here are my favorite pec exercises. We're starting with what I'll call the Bayesian fly. I got this one from Minnow Henselmans, who's one of my favorite fitness people. This takes advantage of that horizontal flexion we've been talking about, and also the cables as I just articulated. You can get a really long range of motion, and again, depending on where you put the bench at, you can either emphasize the stretch or the contraction. Again, either way is good, and either way you get a nice long range of motion, and you will hit all three or two, depending on who you ask, heads of your pec. Number 2, cable guillotine press. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the guillotine press as we go. But again, I like to have a fly motion and a pressing motion with all of my pec training. So this is a pressing version of that Bayesian fly that we just looked at. So using this variation, we can go a little bit heavier, a little bit lower on the reps, but again, because of that internal rotation at the shoulder joint, make sure you're very careful. If you start to get any pain, please tuck the elbows a little bit more, and if that solves the problem, then carry on like that. Do what feels comfortable. Here we have a dumbbell guillotine press. Make sure you keep the elbows really high. No need to touch the dumbbells together at the top. Again, after a certain point, there's no more stress on that muscle. So just make sure you get your elbows extended. And here is the barbell guillotine press. Now, this one is probably the most tough on the shoulder joint because that barbell puts you into a very fixed path of movement. So be most careful with this one. The benefit of this one is the loadability. Okay, now we're back to our cable chest press. This one is a little bit more elbow tucked. You've got a roughly 45-degree angle between the torso and the upper arm. So this one's going to be a lot easier on your shoulder joints. And here's a side view. Make sure with your cables that you pay particular attention to the line of resistance, which in this case is the cable itself. You want a straight line from when you extend your arm all the way to the anchor point of the cables. We want to make most of our pec movements flat or totally horizontal, and a minor amount of them incline. Here's a standard dumbbell press. Standard dumbbell press, old school, classic. It gets the job done perfectly fine. And again, you get a little bit longer range of motion with the dumbbells than you do with a barbell. And speaking of, good old-fashioned barbell bench press. Still a great pec builder, although the exercises that I've shown you up to this point, I would rank a little bit more highly for pec hypertrophy. And we had to cover the incline as well. So you want a very slight incline angle. If you go any higher than roughly 30 degrees, I would even say this clip is a little bit high. Any higher than 30 degrees and you're gonna end up putting all that stress on the anterior deltoid instead of your pecs. So low incline on all of your incline movements. Here's the incline dumbbell bench press, 45-degree angle between the torso and the upper arm. Again, you can never go wrong with a dumbbell bench press. And then finally, barbell bench press. So you might notice that I keep going cable to dumbbell to barbell. The reason being is, again, I would rank cables number 1 for pec hypertrophy, again, because you can adduct and flex the shoulder joint to a higher degree than you can with dumbbells and barbells, and then dumbbells over barbells because a dumbbell you can get your arms a lot further back. You don't have that bar in the middle stopping you. And this one is just a personal favorite of mine. I really like using rings for pec work. Because the rings are so freely moving, they're much easier on your joints than both dumbbells and barbells. Your wrists, elbows, and shoulder joints can all move very naturally with rings. So I really enjoy using these. And these have been a staple in my programs for a long time. And you can also put the rings out fairly wide, although it's extremely difficult, so don't start with that, to get that adduction and that flexion we've been talking about. Here's how you can progress the move. You slowly walk your feet back, and then once you get to a point where you're getting a lot of reps and you need to progress further, throw your feet up on a box. And then you can keep progressing, and this is the benefit of doing rings over just a normal push-up, is because you're further elevated off the ground, you can load this exercise up. So I like my brute belt. I've had it for years. It's held up extremely well. I should do a review on this. Much better than a dip belt as well. And then again, you can slowly but surely load this exercise, and so long as you are progressively overloading, then you are making the progress that you need to. And that's my final note on pec training. Make sure you are always progressively overloading the body part. That's the case with all your muscles. Bit by bit, keep getting stronger.